Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It's already Friday, October 18th, 2024, and the topic today is tips on getting into drawing. This topic came to me because I feel like it would be helpful for the viewers of my channel. So I'll put this in the basic drawing playlist, and I'll also link to the video called Introducing the AOS Triad, which is this thing, as I call it, because I find it helpful. And so it's this triangle of, let's just call it drawing in the middle here. And one is drawing from imagination, then studying, and then style. So I talk about it a little bit more, but I mean, it was an introduction. And I'm going to be a little bit more informal with this video. We'll see how it goes. In some ways, it'll be kind of like a podcast, which I've been wanting to do for a long time, in which I used to listen to all the time. And so, yeah, let's do that. So tips on getting into drawing. So that the name came to me because I feel like that could be the main barrier to people drawing. And so the AOS Triad, as I call it. So yeah, there'll be some notes here in quotes. So none of these are new concepts, but maybe the way they go together, which is basically what style is. Maybe that's the secret. But so just look at the idea of drawing. Where's that even coming from? So you either want to get into drawing or you don't. But I feel like we naturally want to draw. That's kind of my belief. And so that comes from imagination. So to get into drawing, I feel like first you need some kind of tool. So it could be your hand if you had to draw finger paint or like on dirt. There's that, or you could use a stick in the dirt. But then we kind of came up with pencils. So then the next thing is doodles. Get used to doodling. So that's connected to imagination. So yeah, get used to like whatever instrument that you have, just get used to doodling with it. And so this is what I would scribble in the margins of my homework paper. I'm also drinking coffee and tea The coffee is out of necessity for me, but the tea is for my throat. So hopefully that'll help out. And then, it feels better. And then if I have to take a cough drop, I will. So just get used to doodling. So as you're doing this with a pencil, that's probably the easiest thing to start with. Then you start to move a little bit into this idea of study. So what is study? So when you're doing doodles, just scribbling, whatever, this is when a kid draws like a city, but you'll notice that it's not that different than when a professional artist thumbnails. So the next thing would be the idea of line. So get used to doodling, and then start to understand that you're using lines to draw with. So that's how you're drawing. And lines can be, I'm not setting a timer, like I said, it's a little bit more informal, but if you are new, I usually, I draw every day, and I usually set a timer for 5 minutes, but that's not always, but the main thing is we're going to be drawing and sketching, and it's going to be every day. So then you learn that line can be a point. You can have points, and if you connect the points, you have line. So you can have points, you can have small point, a big one. So notice that as it gets bigger, you start to move into shape. So drawing on a fundamental level is about this. You can draw a line through it. It could be pretty straight, it could be wobbly, it could be jaggedy. So I find that this is really kind of what you begin with. And so then everything, you'll realize, okay, well, everything is some kind of line and some kind of shape. And so that a tree is some kind of shape like this. And then to draw it, you're using lines to draw. So now you're moving from this idea of just imagination. So imagination is the tree. That's your imagination. That's your thought. That's your idea. And then you can just draw it however you want. Then study might be looking and thinking to yourself, well, what does a tree have? It has branches, it has different shapes. Sometimes the tree doesn't have leaves. Sometimes it kind of does this sort of thing. So this is how it evolved. Is people notice these things. This is the reason that we draw. And then the style is really what developed out of this. So for example, the style is pencil is a style, and I'm using a mechanical pencil, so it's very thin. So that's a style. So speaking of that, the next thing would be, let's still stick with the pencil, but use different pencils. So the next thing might be still part of studying, but moving into style now. It's this idea of, well, sometimes on a tree, one side is darker than the other. So this is what your eyes tell you. And if you can't see, so we're talking about visual art, then you wouldn't know any of this. It wouldn't matter. But visually, when you're looking at it, you'll notice, okay. And then sometimes the ground gets darker on one side of it. So again, this is the basic building blocks of drawing, where you're not labeling anything. And then the style is this. The style is the tool itself. The medium itself is the style. And then the style is your hand. And then it's also the way you see things. And that's really how you come up with your style. Because in that previous video of the triad, I was talking about preference is also another name. It's just what you like. Just like a musical style is just what you like, but it's also the instrument, the sound of it. So then, yeah, we begin to move into, again, still studying, but starting to go into the style. Because again, the pencil, if I were using a different tool, let's say that later on we invented ink and pens and stuff. What if I just wanted to, as I, again, study, but the idea of the tree is coming from my imagination. The tree is just there. like the idea of a tree comes from the way we think, like we call it that. So, but then I might think, okay, well, if I have a pen and I outline, that sort of helps me. What if I don't do this and I just go like this, just trace over these lines that I drew? I could just do that. Again, it's the triad thing. So the pen gives it a style. My imagination tells me it looks like a tree. I might even use memory and draw a particular tree. Maybe this tree is outside that I saw. And then by studying it, I might come to conclusions about the branches and how there's leaves on the ground. So hopefully this will help you get into drawing, because it is at the heart of it. That's what's going on. So this is just a style that I'm employing. You could say it's realistic. Maybe a more cartoony version would be just an outline like this. We could call that cartoony. But it's still a drawing. And also, when you combine all of it, then you get communication, or expression would be the other way to say it. Then the next thing would be, I'll talk a bit about color. Like, how does that affect things? So I'm going to use some Papermate color pens here. So color is related to drawing. You can draw with color. So what if we did the same kind of thing, but let's move into some shapes. So we did line, shape. So let's do some form. So the next thing would be like form, because when you start to add the shadow and stuff, now you're showing the form. So let's say that there's a shadow. Then you might notice, okay, I see this going on. So there's some form, and then how does color affect it? That could be like another thing to think about. And then you might think, okay, well, this is lighter. Well, let's just go like this. Let's just think, okay, it's this purple ball here, and it seems to get darker. Then you look at it and you think, well, it's even darker. So let me just ask yourself, well, what looks darker? Like, what if I put this down here? This seems to be darker. Did that make it look more like a ball, or like if you're looking at one or imagining one? So it's still imagining, studying style. The imagination is like the fact that you drew this, and then, or maybe you remembered it or thought of it, or the fact that you drew it and you think that this is a sphere because your mind is saying that it's telling you, okay, that's what that is. And like someone else could see that and say, okay, like I know what that is. And then you only knew to do like the shadow and stuff because you studied it. And then the color is the style, because if I use something else, then it would look different. So let's use a Sharpie. So I'm going to copy this, which is studying, but the style looks different. It has a different style to it. Then you might think, okay, I'll make it darker by just using this pen because it looks darker. So we imagine that these are spheres, and then we study how dark or light it is and the shape of it and the style. This happens to be mixed media because I use a pen and markers. So I think that this is a good way to get into drawing because ultimately it comes down to this. Now obviously the kind of like the test is when you draw a face, because everybody knows like a face, but for this example, for like a face, it's still the same basic thing. So when you think of a face, I mean, you might think when you use your imagination, you're like, well, it's typically kind of roundish, and then there's eyes. And I'm doing this without necessarily trying to make it proportionally correct. But this is what people tend to think about when they remember a face, so they know that there's a nose, and then mouth, ears, and people have hair. And you'll find that it's not that bad. So there's that. Now, if you study more, you might think, so let's study a little bit more here. You might notice there's more going on. Maybe there's more going on with the, if I can zoom in. You might notice there's more going on with the eyes. If you really study. But the other one wasn't bad. Then you might notice there's more going on with the nose. Like there's even some kind of shape to it. Like there's more to the lips. And then more to the hair. More to the ears. And then the style is a like a pencil sketch, pencil drawing. You might notice there's more to like the contour of the face. then beyond that, you might start to notice like the shadows, like we were saying. Maybe one side of the face. Seems darker. So hopefully that's helping you out. And then once you get into drawing, it's just endless fun. But yeah, I wouldn't get too hung up on the style or anything. I mean, you could do an outliney style. Is this on the camera? So with this one, I'm just gonna outline it. And again, this is just a style. One, to outline stuff. Two, to because I'm using a pen, a felt tip pen. And so a lot of this is coming from, originally from imagination, but then studying. You can also study styles, like that's also a form of study. So for example, the way different styles exaggerate certain features and stuff, like that's a style, and you can study it. So in this style, I'm not really gonna like shade. I'm just gonna outline things. And then what if, for like the shaded area, I'll just take a pen. I'm just going to pick something kind of dark. So instead of, so what I'm doing is just coloring it in. So let's just keep it kind of a solid shape. Again, this can be from study. You could look at people or photos. The imagination part is the fact that you're imagining that this is a person, even though, oops, hopefully that was in there, even though it's a drawing on paper. It's not actually a person at all. So this is also a style. I'm just gonna color over the pencil. I might just leave it at that for now, and then think about wrapping up the video. I know it might seem kind of basic, but I mean the topic was tips on getting into drawing. That's basically, I mean, how it works. Now, I did it pretty beginner friendly, but then I think if you're like an intermediate kind of person where a lot of this like you kind of get, but the thing is there's a lot of like how people say you kind of have to like grind it out, practice, in other words. This is kind of what you are gonna practice. So with that said, I'm gonna wrap up this video and I'm gonna keep working on this. This is a good way to like, as far as like if you're intermediate and also starting to be more advanced in your drawing abilities, this is a way of problem solving and figuring out, like, again, what if you imagine something, how are you going to draw it? You might have to study it and then come up with like a style, which is really all of it put together. I mean, it's about what you want to express. Like, what are you wanting people to get from it? And it could be entertainment, it could just be fun, it could be whatever. But that's starting to get more into the advanced level where you really think about what you're wanting to express in your art and in your drawings. So with that said, I'm going to sign off, and I want to thank you for joining me today and for supporting the channel. And until next time, keep on sketching.